Okay, we're going to go ahead and get things started now. Welcome to today's webinar, Faster Payments, Huge Statement Savings. It's your money. Stop leaving it on the table. This webinar is sponsored by PatientBond in partnership with the Urgent Care Association. Today, we're going to be sharing insights on how to accelerate patient payments, reduce statement costs, and increase cash flow by using a combination of digital outreach and consumer science. Importantly, we're going to cover real-world cases applying these patient-preferred approaches for significant returns. Now, my name is Brent Walker. I'm Senior Vice President of Marketing and Analytics for PatientBond, and I'm going to be your host today. And our presenters today include Mike Gianfrancesco, Senior Vice President of Urgent Care for PatientBond. Mike has over 22 years of sales and marketing experience in multiple business-to-business verticals. Prior to joining PatientBond, Mike was the Business Development Director for a multi-location urgent care system in Chicago. He was responsible for identifying and evaluating market dynamics and communication channels to increase market share and grow revenue. Mike's primary roles for PatientBond are to increase urgent care market penetration by assisting owners and operators in the development and implementation of digital communication programs and processes. And we also have Jerry Creech, Senior Executive for Revenue Cycle Management. Jerry spent the last 13 years growing two different multi-site urgent care groups with a focus on finance, billing, and operational workflow. Jerry has completed multiple urgent care acquisitions and worked to streamline the registration, credentialing, billing, and financial policy processes. Now, a couple of housekeeping items first. If anybody in the listening audience wants to ask a question, please type it in the Q&A icon at the bottom of the screen. I'm going to be collecting these questions throughout the presentation, and at the end, I will moderate a Q&A with our presenters. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Mike to kick us off.
All right. Thank you, Brent. Definitely appreciate the intro. Okay. So let's kick it off here. Let's take a look at a little bit of stats here. We're going to talk about the changing landscape for patient responsibility balances. So first, patient responsibility balances are projected to rise by 9.9% annually through 2026. 87% of consumers report getting healthcare bills in the mail. That is a lot of paper, and that is a lot of your money. 70% of providers reported that it takes 1 month or longer on average to collect payment from a patient. 65% of patients say having more payment options would improve their overall patient experience, which we know is very, very important in healthcare, especially with the rise of consumerism and the increase in the patient portion of the balance due. More than 50% of patients prefer electronic statements and billing options. 43% of patients said they paid medical bills online in the past 12 months. Now, 82% of US consumers, of which all of us on this meeting right now are, made digital payments for online purchases, in-store checkouts, and person-to-person transactions in 2021. More than 75% of consumers choose to pay their household bills through online payment channels. Those last two bullets, folks, just to be clear, we're all consumers, and the vast majority of us do prefer to pay our bills digitally. Okay, so keeping with the agenda, we're going to talk some healthcare consumer science and psychographics. Healthcare is complicated. I do love this image because it helps to illustrate what we're going to talk about in the upcoming slides. Healthcare is complicated. So are your patients. We don't all have the same attitudes, values, motivations, and beliefs when it comes to our healthcare. So let's talk about healthcare consumer segmentation, and then we'll talk about why it matters. And specifically, why does it matter for patient responsibility balances and your RCM process overall? We all know what demographics are: your age, your race, your gender, your income, health conditions, even behavioral. What did you buy? What did you do? What does your claims history look like? What is your overall utilization of the healthcare system? Psychographics is the bottom of this pyramid, because this is your deep-seated attitudes, values, beliefs, personality, and motivations. This is the foundation of all of us. So why should you care? Why am I showing you this right now? Because traditional methods like demographic, while it's very important, behavioral, while it's very important, you need the psychographics on top of both of those to really get at the why. Why did an individual choose your urgent care above your competitor's urgent care? Why did they take a specific action? Why did they not pay that bill? I'm going to show you two patients. In a database, these patients, well, I'm going to show you two people, but they could be patients. In a database, they look exactly the same. So here are two males. They're both born in 1948. They were raised in the UK. They live in castles, and they're both wealthy and famous. They are essentially the same person. However, when you take a closer look, we can see that they are very different. Now, do you really think that what you would say to Prince Charles is going to motivate Ozzy Osbourne? The answer to that is clearly not. So with our psychographic model, and on the screen right now is our extensive research that's gone into the model. The foundation comes from the work that two of our execs, Brent Walker, who, thank you, Brent, just introduced Jerry and I. He's on this webinar with us today, and Casey Albertson, the work that they did during their tenures at Procter & Gamble, obviously a very, very massive consumer products company. Casey and Brent took the knowledge that they learned at Procter & Gamble from 3 generations of psychographic modeling, and they created the PatientBond healthcare consumer segmentation model. Now, in the top line on the screen, you can see the research that has been done over almost a decade, along with the focuses of each one of these studies. Each study typically consisted of about 384 questions, give or take. The N that you see in each one of the study, that represents the number of respondents in each one of those studies. At PatientBond, we typically try to do 2 studies a year. So what types of questions or topics did we ask these survey respondents? So what we asked them was, So what we asked them was, we'll go to the who, demographic information, socioeconomic. We asked them about their healthcare conditions. The what, general health and wellness, healthcare attitudes and behaviors, obviously very important to what we're going to be discussing here today. Their utilization, the respondents' utilization of hospitals, primary care, urgent care, pharmacy, payers, specialists. We also asked them, what are the top services that you want from an urgent care? What are your drivers of satisfaction? And then the how. Where do they get their healthcare information from? What are their desired channels of engagement and the frequency of communication? And folks, that can differ based on segment and the type of information that you are relaying to the patient. What I mean by that is it clinical information? Is it a visit follow-up? Is it marketing information? And for what we're talking about here today, is it related to payment? Is it related to a bill that they currently owe? And then, of course, digital technology and adoption, which we'll be talking about here today. So that is our research. That is all encompassing of the hard work that Brent and Casey have done and given us here at PatientBond to put into practice, which we're going to talk to Jerry a little bit later on about operationalizing what I'm showing you here right now. So after those decades of research and millions of dollars later, the result was PatientBond's 5-segment healthcare consumer psychographic model. Now, I want to point out, this is for adults ages 18 and up. The numbers that you see on the screen, these represent the national distribution of each one of these segments in the United States. Now, why ages 18 or up? Because typically the imprinting process happens in all of us between about ages 1 and ages 18. Okay. Yes, you can go to college. Yes, you can get advanced degrees. Some of your opinions will change. But your core values, your core attitude, it's pretty much there when we're about 18. So we're going to start on the left, and which is the most proactive segment, and we're going to go to the most reactive, And I'm going to tell you who utilizes urgent care the most out of each one of these segments. Self-achievers, 19% of the US population. These folks are motivated by goals, progress. They love to have a plan. They will follow a healthcare plan to a T. They're also the most likely to have a primary care doctor. Your balance seekers, 17% of the US population. These folks love options and choices when it comes to their healthcare. They do a lot of self-directed research. Your priority jugglers, 18% of the US population. These are your family-oriented folks. They typically have children or they're taking care of aging parents. They put their personal well-being behind their obligations to family and work. Your direction takers, just like it sounds, 15% of the US population. The doctor says this, they do that. They follow their doctor's advice. Their doctor is the most credible source to them when it comes to their healthcare. Now, the group over on the far right, the willful endurers, they are, yes, the biggest percentage on the screen at 31%. They live in the here and now. They do what they want, when they want. They live for today. They love simplicity. They love ease. They only go to a doctor when absolutely necessary. They're not proactive about their health. They're the least likely to have a primary care doc. So what does that lead me to? Your prime segment in the United States that visits an urgent care with the greatest frequency is that willful endurer, okay? They are the prime prospect for urgent care. You folks, everybody on the call has willful endurers. You have each one of these segments in your EMR, EHR, in your database right now today. Willful endurer, prime prospects, 70%, followed by self-achievers. Those two are the top utilizers of urgent care in the United States, okay? Now, am I suggesting right here, hey, if I don't have an abundance of willful endurers that reside in my service radius around my center, should I go ahead and shut my center down? No, that's not what I'm saying at all. You have to specifically address each one of these segments in a language and content that will resonate with that particular individual's attitudes, motivations, values, and beliefs. So how do we know? How do we know who's a self-achiever? So we know the psychographic makeup of your service radius around your centers. We will use the most predominant segments in a given area as the primary driver to determine what content should be used in your RCM messaging. So how do we know? We know because we actually have used a sophisticated algorithm combined with our psychographic model and third-party data. And what that had allowed us to do is project the entire US adult population. So we can drill right down to around your center, service radius. I can tell you what the predominant makeup is of a psychographic segment in your service area. We've also done many database appends where we can project one of the 5 psychographic segments onto an individual just by using their first and last name and home address. That projection is about 60% accurate, which is 3 times better than chance. Remember, folks, it's all about the resonation, getting that patient to pay the bill. I wanted to add here too, yes, channel mix and frequency can and does vary by segment. And it also depends on what are we communicating to them about. Is it a balance due? Is it a clinical message? Is it a marketing message? So self-achievers may prefer an email for a marketing message. They may prefer a text message. And this is not actual data. This would be our secret sauce. This is what we do for our clients here at PatientBond. I'm just illustrating that the differences between the healthcare consumer segments vary in terms of what channel they prefer to consume specific information from their healthcare provider on. This one's pretty obvious to me. I mean, online payment is the best, right? A lot of you on the call, your urgent cares, you have online bill pay portals. You have it there for a reason. Healthcare consumers don't want to write out a check. None of us want to put on a stamp and walk to the mailbox. Goal, make it simple and easy to pay. That's what the consumers want. And in this day and age, we've all become accustomed to paying our bills online, just like we do in so many other industries. Don't push them to a patient portal and make them sign up for a username and passcode. The reality is portal utilization is anemic in the United States. You can bring them into a very rich and easy payment experience with kicking it off with a simple text message. I'm going to show you a little bit of how that works up and coming here in the presentation and just kind of walk you through it just to get your wheels turning a little bit. And yes, each segment does differ in terms of willingness to pay. You can see on the screen right now, it varies by healthcare entity too as well. Was it a hospital? Was it an urgent care? Was it a primary care physician? Each segment has different levels of willingness to pay based on the entity that they visited. Okay, so medical bill cost concerns, very important. I mentioned, and I said, the highest value target for urgent care, that willful endure, is also the highest risk for not paying their bills. How we neutralize that is we utilize the consumer science psychographics that I just covered, those different segments, those different attitudes, motivations, values, and beliefs, to speak to them in every other segment on their terms and communicate in a language that resonates with the individual. What is the end goal of this for purpose of today's discussion? It's increasing the probability that the patient will pay a bill. And I'm going to show you how we combine technology with psychographics to get to that increase in probability that they're going to pay that patient financial responsibility bill. Also, you'll notice here that the willful endure does state that they do have typically the hardest time out of any other segment paying their medical bills. It's just a suggestion. You may, if you have a predominance of willful endurers around a given location or a given center, you may at some point want to think up offering a payment plan. Maybe if that patient is, if you don't do it already, but maybe if that patient is past 45 days or they're past 50 days past due. Or even right up front, if you deem the balance is higher than a certain threshold, you may say, hey, we have a lot of willful endurers in this area. Why don't we let them know that payment plans are an option to go ahead and try and increase that overall payment rate. Okay. All right. We're going to get into some content and workflows. This is the meat and potatoes. I've given you a background on psychographics. I've given you a quick background on, combined with consumer science. We're going to get in the operationalizing of what I've just shown you in terms of consumer science. So at PatientBond, again, making it as simple as possible to get started, making it as simple as possible as patients to pay their bills, accelerating your cash flow, which is why you're on this call today, saving on the statement costs that you guys are currently paying. And if you do billing in-house, optimizing those FTEs, getting them spending time on what you need them spending time on instead of opening up an envelope, flipping over a billing statement, typing in a credit card number, and on to the next one. Okay, so segmented messaging content matters, okay? So I'm going to put up two examples here on the screen. We're going to go through this. I'm going to show you some more segmented content. So it does matter. It matters for your digital workflows. Those words, those phrases, it's all about resonation that will drive the action to pay that bill. Okay, so we're going to go over some examples. These are just two quick ones. Hey, that willful endure, focus on easy to do now, easy to make the payment. That self-achiever, remember folks, they're proactive. They're very proactive. They know that a portion of that healthcare bill that comes from your urgent care, they know it's going to be their responsibility. Speak to them in a language that's going to get them, increase the probability of them taking action to pay that bill. So let's start out with the basics, and we'll do some base content here. So these are your claim workflows, right? This can happen before it ever even turns into patient responsibility balances. And, as you see here, hey, claim submitted, you're sending the patient either a text or it could be an email too. Thank you for visiting urgent care on X date. We've submitted your claim to Blue Cross Blue Shield, United Healthcare, Cigna. Please call us with any questions. You're basically just giving the patient a heads up. Hey, we submitted your claim. You may have a balance due. Okay, we'll go ahead and let you know. Now, let's say something happens and you guys all deal with claims being denied. Maybe it's coded wrong, whatever the reason might be. Okay. You have the option. You can simply, and this is part of your patient journey, this whole process from start to finish of that patient paying that bill. This is very important to the satisfaction of your patients. Okay. We've all seen the complaints online at XYZ urgent care about, something to do about the billing process. And those of you that have been in business for a year, 2 years, 10 years, 20 years, you've all had these complaints, okay, about billing. This is a way to keep in contact with the patient so they know what's going on. The claim got denied. If you think it's an error, you may want to contact BCBS or your payer directly to get it resolved. And we don't know what the issue is. Maybe they went ahead, maybe they gave them the wrong insurance card, whatever it might be. So if the issue goes to 30 days, what you're telling them here in this message that you see on the screen is that, hey, we're just letting you know, if we don't get this resolved in the next 30 days, this entire balance from your visit, this is actually going to be your responsibility. For those of you that do card on file, okay? And remember, we're still in the claim. This isn't even patient responsibility balance yet. So right here, you do card on file, you're letting the patient know we have not had this claim paid by BCBS or your payer for 60 days. We're letting you know that we are going to charge your credit card on file the entire visit balance on or about this date. So you're giving them a heads up. If they have questions, they can call you. This also helps to reduce chargebacks too. And I'll touch on that in an upcoming slide as well. If they don't have card on file and now it becomes their balance, hey, this is pretty much your balance. You're going to have to pay this. Go ahead and just insert your online bill pay link and we'll drive them right to your online bill pay to make the payment. Staying with them, letting them know. And right here, a statement hasn't even been generated. So that's just the claim portion, okay? So now we're out of the claims process, right? Let's say insurance has paid, that patient financial responsibility is established, it's transferred to their responsibility, and you do card on file. This is a very simple message. Hey, we received that insurance payment for your July 5th visit, that $45 remaining balance, we're going to charge your card on or about this date. Okay. Helps to reduce the chargebacks, helps to reduce the angry call-ins. Hey, I don't understand why Urgent Med or Medical Services LLC charged my credit card when I went to, urgent care specialists or awesome urgent care. Oftentimes the legal name is not the same name that you guys currently operate under. So pre or initial statement messaging. Okay. This is all about keeping the patient out of the statement cycle. And you saw this message earlier. This would be an example of a willful endure message. Hey, Mr. or Mrs. Willful endure. It's easy to do now. Message from your urgent care. Your insurance paid. You owe $45. Paying today is simple. Just go ahead, click this link. We'll bring them right to your online bill pay portal, and they can easily make the payment. We'll give them their account number, which oftentimes is a PID if they need to enter that in your portal as well. We'll give it to them right in the message. A statement has never gone out. You'll hear from Jerry later on. Do this day one that patient responsibility balance is transferred. Keep them out of the statement cycle and stop paying for those statements. Get that cash flow in quick. And yes, folks, these can be done via email too as well. Text messaging typically elicits the faster response. Most text messages get opened up within the first 90 seconds. So, dear Mike, this is an example of a balance seeker email. We know you have choices for your healthcare services. We appreciate you choosing our urgent care. Your insurance is paid. You owe $45. Serve them up your payment portal. Take them right there. They love those choices and options. You can say, hey, you can go ahead and call in if you want to make a payment. You can go to the payment portal, give them those choices and options. Let's talk past due. All right. So past due, let's say we hit 30 days, right? Or we're at day 27. And any of these days or cadences that you folks see here on the screen, these are completely customizable. Okay. You could send it at day 27, day 1, day 27, day 37, whatever you would want to do. So the patient is now past due. They're day 30. And this is a self-achiever message. Because you're proactive, again, they are the proactive segment. You know this bill is your responsibility. That $45 is now 30 days past due. Please go ahead and make a payment. And that self-achiever, typically, again, very proactive when it comes to their healthcare. They know they owe a portion of this balance. Maybe they got the bill, all right? Maybe it went to the bottom of the stack. And maybe they said, you know what, I'm going to pay that before the end of the month. And they just simply forgot. So they'll get on there right away, hit your bill pay link that appears in the message, and boom, go pay the bill, pay the $45, done. Easier than licking a stamp or licking a stamp, putting it on an envelope, walking out to the mailbox, writing on a check, what have you. So day 60, this is an example of a priority juggler, day 60. Now, at day 60, and any of this, we want to remain respectful as we get into the collection danger zone, okay? But you want to be a little bit more stringent in the language. Hey, that payment is now 60 days past due. We know that the priority juggler is busy. Remember, they're juggling friends, family obligations, work obligations. They're busy. I guarantee you, they probably haven't even opened the bill, okay? So we know they're busy. All you need to do is easily click here to go ahead and make that payment. Now, day 90. Again, folks, day 88, day 85, we're in the collection danger zone right now. So we definitely want to get, again, remaining respectful, but we want to get a little bit more stringent with the language. Your payment of $45 from your April 13th visit to our urgent care is more than 90 days past due. This is a direction taker message. Remember, direction takers do what their healthcare providers say. We recommend that you call us or go online to make the full payment to protect your credit rating. We're letting them know, hey, you need to make this payment. We're telling you to make this payment. Remember, it's a direction taker. What I would suggest here also as a best practice, especially when you get over 60 days, is that you utilize dual channels. We will give you the suggested channel based on the segment and say, okay, this is what we've seen based on our data and based on our research. We start out in one channel, but when we get into the collection danger zone, I would recommend you utilizing dual channels if we have an email address available. And that means sending the message that you see on the screen via SMS, but also sending it via email at the same time, because we have to keep them out of collections. So just a thought there. Speaking of collections, okay, we all have bad debt. We all suppress statements, whether that's, because of small balances or, it's frankly too old and the cost to collect is too high. When a statement costs us $2.50 with postage or $3 with postage, we've deemed the cost to collect is too high. Well, with digital, that cost to collect goes exponentially down. So for bad debt, suppressed statements, or small balances, very simple messaging. Hey, message from our urgent care. You have an outstanding balance from 2021 of $45. Now, in this situation, yes, this will increase your call volumes slightly. People will call in with questions and say, hey, I never even got this bill. And for those folks that do have the willingness to pay, they'll say, I never even got this, or I moved and I never even saw this bill, and I don't want to get sent to collections for $45. You will then collect that payment for those folks that have that willingness to pay. They may have just not gotten it. Okay. So on any bad debt, suppressed statements, or small balance workflows, it's, we run typically for our clients, we'll run cadences on these. Okay. And they don't have to be 8 to 14 days. Again, the timelines are customizable. I'm just showing you some examples. We're just saying, hey, to resolve this, it's $45, it's $50, it's $70, that typical urgent care patient responsibility balance after insurance is paid. And then we'll remind them, you do have a past due, you may be going to collections. So those, again, with the willingness to pay, they will go ahead and pay it. Okay. I don't want to ding on my collection or on my credit report when I know I have the $45 to go ahead and make that payment. So, and then day 45, what I'm showing you here, everyone, is that we all have balances sitting there right now that we've suppressed or that is bad debt. Okay. Some of you have much larger balances than others. And for these, what we've seen from our clients that run these type of workflows, just the bad debt piece of it, not even talking about the other piece of it, but just the bad debt piece of it, we collect on average about 14.4% of bad debt balances. So pretty good metrics there, and then good metrics on all the other workflows. About a 5x ROI on what I just showed you. So very, very good. So this last piece here, I wanted to put up to show to you guys today. It's also important to note that you can give your patient a very rich and secure experience. And how we do this is by initiating the payment process with a simple text message. I showed you guys just some outbound text messages where, the patient can take action based on that, push them to your online bill pay portal. What you see on the screen right now is this is the entire process from start to finish. And we do this for clients as well. It's a very rich payment process. Again, simple text message. We verify who the patient is with a one-time passcode authentication. Yeah, we can ask some challenge questions too as well. We do all of this without having to push the patient to a patient portal to sign up for a username and password. So there are many options out there to make sure that billing process is a smooth part of your patient journey, or as smooth as possible, because that is oftentimes the last interaction that they will have with your urgent care until the next time they need you. On average, about a little over 2 times a year or 1.8 times a year. So you want to make sure that billing process really just, leaves a good vibe. I guess I'll leave it at that. No pun intended. Okay. So moving it along. So finally, I want to leave you guys with this. All right. And then we're going to talk to Jerry here in a minute. Whatever your current RCM process is today, whether that's statement, soft collection letter, off to collections, whatever that process is today, it is so simple and easy to wrap digital around it. And what that will do for you is plug those gaps, cash flow, increasing that cash flow, getting the patient to pay quicker. If you do billing in-house, optimizing those FTEs. And then on top of that, think about what you're paying in statement costs. Think about what that costs you, how many statements you send out per month on a, $10, $20, $30, $40, $45, $50 balance. Think about that. Think about what you could save by reducing that. We'll talk to Jerry a little bit about that here in a second. So yes, I just wanted to leave you with that. Think about your current RCM process, what I showed you today, and utilizing digital to plug those gaps, plug those holes, get that cash flow going in quicker. Okay. So without further ado, we're going to talk about actually operationalizing what you've seen today. So I am going to bring in Mr. Jerry Creech. Jerry, how are you?
I'm good. Guys, sorry that Mike didn't want to share my video today. So see a picture here, and then I think a blank screen after that, but it's all going well.
All right. So thank you, Jerry. Thank you. Appreciate it. Appreciate you being with us here today. Obviously, Brent went over your bio. Very, very well-schooled in the RCM world and in the finance world, specifically for urgent care and healthcare in general. So we wanted to go over a few of your insights, and I'm just going to put up some bullet points here, and then I'll let Jerry, elaborate. So Jerry, importance of getting out of the gate quickly.
Yeah. So Mike, you hit on this. You want to start this process as soon as possible. I can't tell you how many practices I've looked at or even purchased that aren't even thinking about this. And the way they kind of view their billing and collection cycle when it comes to patients is, look, the doctor had the experience, the patient got treated, they're better, now, and there's kind of afterthought to what the patient owes, and by kind of starting this really at day one, and suppressing those statements, so you're not sending someone a bill that they're going to pay anyway. It really benefits everybody, and you'll be surprised how many patients actually will proactively act to a digital SMS text versus a paper statement. I can tell you, I'm personally one of them. I'm working all day, and I don't really check my mailbox frequently. When I do, it doesn't always get opened. But if you text me, you have a far greater chance of getting an interaction out of me, especially for like a $45 bill, like we just said.
Okay.
So, what you look at is not everyone's going to do this, right? So what I've seen, over the last, I think I've been on PatientBond now for 6 or 7 years, is, about 60-70% of people are willing to engage in some sort of digital interaction around payments. And the other 30%, just aren't there. And I think as the patients, continue to bring on the newer, younger patients who you can't take their iPhone or their Samsung out of their hand, if you try to, they're going to expect to use that phone to interact versus even have a mailbox to send something to. So vast majority of people are willing to do this, surprisingly. So depending on how you set up your statement suppression that Mike talked about, just around about saying that same 70% kind of mark, they'll typically pay their balance within about a week, right? So if you were to suppress your statements based off your internal policies on how your statements are generated, your EMR system, and how you post things, there's a big post lag or whatever, you set your own standards. But if you give them a chance to do it, the data would say from PatientBond that 68% of them will pay without ever getting a statement ever being sent. And that's held true for me for a long time now. And we'll get into why that helps everybody out. Obviously, it helps from a money perspective, because that means that the people who are participating, 2/3 of them roughly would have paid the bill without ever using that $2.50, $3 statement. Who knows what it'll be as cost of everything continue to rise. I'm sure the post office is next. You go back to my life prior to PatientBond, around 2015 or so, I wouldn't have understood any of this stuff, right? I knew we sent people 3 messages through the mail. Clinic was supposed to collect on it, but that doesn't always happen because the clinics get busy. And then a third-party agency kind of kicked in after the fact, and you didn't think much about it, honestly, and that was kind of the norm. And when I first evaluated this, it was actually for a marketing thing, and the problem I ran into is the bankers were like, "Well, that's great. This is a great marketing thing. How are we going to pay for it?" And that's this concept of, well, what if we don't send statements kicks in, and we started doing math like, well, if we don't send a percentage of statements, that money can be reallocated to either the bottom line or to marketing. And thus this was born years ago. So this is
I just want to say, I want you to talk about how the use of psychographics, what I just covered in the previous slides, how did it impact your payment messaging?
Yeah. So here's my experience in this. I like many of you, I was probably a little skeptical at first about psychographics because I'm probably not the person to psychographic on, or God knows what the result would be. But probably all 5 or something mixed together. But I was like, all right, if you word it differently, people will behave differently. And what I found is I came across a handful of markets that just weren't paying. And when I talked to ops, I'm like, look, it's weird. Like, these other markets are paying their bills and these markets aren't. And I got a lot of demographic info. have less money, or it's because they're located here, and lots of like that very first slide or second slide that showed you the kind of cone of behavior. And so I was talking to PatientBond about it, and they're like, well, have you thought about psychographics? You use it in your marketing campaigns, but what about using it in your payment methods? And I kind of scratched my head for a few minutes, and I talked to the finance guys, and like typical accountants, they're like, what do you mean? Change the language. It says they pay their bill. You click to pay your bill. Well, because I was talking to accountants and bankers, right? We're probably all like cut from the same cloth, right? So, I decided, hey, look, let's just try it. It doesn't cost anything. PatientBond went in and they pulled some of the segments that, or some of the locations. I believe it was a 5-mile radius, and it said, hey, look, here's your default message now. In these clinics that are low performing on the patient responsibility payments, you guys are way off base. We want to change it to something that fits their needs. And I'm like, well, it can't hurt. And what I literally told PatientBond was, all right, the bankers aren't really swallowing it, but you know what? It doesn't cost anything. And worst case, if it results in even lower payments, we'll just default it back. And that's a very important thing that I said. I've met so many other vendors, not picking on any of the vendors, but I've met so many other vendors who don't offer that flexibility, right? They say, hey, look, we send a statement instead of a text instead of a statement. It's your standard language. You can't change a statement. You can't change a text, and you have to play by these rules. And I've been very critical of those vendors saying no. Being able to pivot on relatively quickly and adapt to your patient needs and your patient demands is really, really, really important. And what I saw was a dramatic increase in payments instantly. So we changed the messaging to what it needed to say. Everybody got approved, and immediately all of a sudden the payments started pouring in. And I'm like, wow, who would have ever thought just by changing the message to some of the examples Mike showed earlier would make a difference? It does. And if people who tell you they don't, they haven't done it before. It does work.
Okay. All right. Talk about some statement savings, Jerry.
Yeah, it's kind of go back to the data above, right? We said, people aren't going to pay their bill or pay their bill without getting a statement. So therefore, you don't pay for statements. And it's funny, of the willingness to pay, people think about, oh, well, I saved one statement. Not necessarily. Mike said in the earlier slides, some people take 30 to 45 days. So if you go off some default kind of normal patient flows for statements, you'll get one at 30 days and one at 60 days. Well, if you're posting in your data, lag is 10 days or, 7 business days, you could potentially send 2 statements. So what it results in, you'll look at your bills and all of a sudden you're like, man, I'm not paying for these statements anymore because they paid their bill electronically, which means if you're sending statements in-house, everyone's really happy, right? Because you're not stuffing envelopes anymore. If you're using a third-party vendor, then you're not having to pay that vendor to print and mail those statements. And the FTE labor of actually having to either post stuff in an envelope or post a manual $25 check you get, it goes away. And it might just kind of threw that bolt up. I was probably ahead of it. But, they're happier employees. They can spend their time, doing other parts of their job that are more important. And especially if you're growing or if you've got a lot of COVID stuff going on, you've got plenty of other things to do than worry about mail and worry about posting $25 payments from the patient. And it just makes them happier, right? I mean, you don't walk into an office, a billing office, and say, hey, who likes going to get the mail every day and getting like 200 envelopes and opening up the little machine and then pulling them out and then going into your EMR and manually searching the patient. And if it was for those of y'all who know me, if it was my bill, my handwriting's awful. So you probably can't read what I wrote, and you're like, great, I gotta find this patient because the guy writes like he's with a crayon or something. So if you give me something I can click on, I can't mess it up.
Right. And then for everybody on the call right now, I talked about bad debt, suppressed statements, small balances. Jerry, just elaborate on a little bit what you saw in your experience.
Yeah, I mean, typically when you think about the patient portion of the bill, this obviously isn't, any other section of your payment patterns. But, typically, again, you've got about 70% of people paying quickly. That's going to speed up your cash collections, and it's going to reduce your aging. So your accountant people who do reserve analysis and whatnot, by speeding that up, you're typically going to cut your patient bad debt down by about half.
Pretty good numbers there. Pretty good numbers. Thank you, Jerry, for those insights. Now we're going to get to Jerry's RCM best practices. Card on file.
Yeah, I mean, we just talked about, patient responsibility growing by like 10% every year for the next couple of years. The easiest way is, if your EMR vendor allows, to get that card on file and use text messages to keep the patient informed. So if you've got a denial, or if you've got a balance due, in urgent care, typically the balance dues are relatively small compared to like a hospital or a specialist or whatnot. So, it's a relatively low dollar amount. And, by having that card and having that SMS communication, to be clear that it's coming, you're not going to have the chargebacks. And people get upset when they get debit card or credit card transactions they don't expect. And one of the most common things I hear is, hey, I just got my debit card charged by a legal entity 123, and I never heard of legal entity 123. I'm like, well, patient, that's a legal name. It's got a DBA of, whatever your urgent care name is. But, in court practice of medicine, in the way you're legally structured, most times, there are instances where, you have a different name, and they get upset. And by having that text from you, they know it's you. You can put your logo on it if you have MMS. If not, you can at least put your name in it with SMS and text. They know it's you, and there's brand recognition, and they know that $40 charge is actually where they went, and they're less likely to call saying that there's been fraud or kind of nonsense.
All right. Give them a link to that statement.
It's amazing how people don't have this. Let them see their statement, right? Click on the link and view it and say, oh, it's for a 99213 with a COVID test when I had COVID back in January. This makes it clear that what they're paying is real. And, they can get, you can send a statement after, a week or so, or two, depending on your own processes. But, to get that to reinform that typically can get kind of lost on the counter. Maybe they remember seeing it, maybe they don't. Having a digital link that lets them view what they're going to pay, and then pay it easily, is super important. Again, a lot of software doesn't necessarily have that capability. It's just pay this bill, and sometimes they're skeptical of what they're paying.
All right. Statement suppression.
Yeah, I'd give it a week or two. Like Mike said, if you text somebody, you're far likely to get a response quicker, right? I'll know if I'm in a meeting, I need to email the CEO or something. I may or may not get a response for a couple of days. If I shoot him a very brief, short text, I might just get a thumbs up back or something, maybe sometimes even a thumbs down, depending on what I sent. But, hopefully more thumbs up than thumbs down, right? Give it time, right? If you're just going to send a text and send a statement the next day, you're probably not going to bear the fruits of what I'm talking about. But give it time. Think about how many statements you're going to send, because they're super expensive. And you'll be, I'm just enamored by how many y'all you spoke to or seen that send statements in infinity. They're like, hey, we send statements till they pay. I'm like, well, you sent 10 statements for a $20 balance. Like, you're in the hole like $30. And, I don't understand that. Like, it's just a waste of money. So.
All right.
Yeah. And then day one. So depending on your EMR, day one maybe be like day 5 or 6, depending on how your ERAs and your correspondence and your payment portals are set up. But whenever you have it and it's posted, ideally it would be day one in a perfect world. Send that message out. work with your EMR vendor to get that data over the PatientBond ASAP and get it out, because the faster you send that text, the faster they can actually pay you.
Okay, late charges.
Yeah, I've seen this on and off in different practices. Some's been lenient, some's been aggressive. Typically, if you just do like a nominal fee, it doesn't have to be anything crazy, for a late charge, just to cover that statement cost, right? And when people have asked about it, say, look, we're charging you a couple of bucks because we sent 3 statements. Now, sometimes you may have the person say, I moved, and if you check their intake form and they, gave the right address, but maybe the front desk was busy or missed it, and then change it, then waive it, right? But a lot of times people will admit, you're right, I just didn't do it. And the texts really help too. You're like, hey, we sent you 3 statements, but we sent you like 6 texts or whatever you guys decide, right? But we sent you some text, and here's the days we sent them. You're calling me from the number we sent them to, so we know it's the right number. We've got the system that says it was delivered and opened. There's not a lot of argument there, right? Like, we sent you text. We can't prove you opened your mail, but we can prove you got your text, right? So it's a digital world, and it's very important practice to think about. Yeah, and to the point I just said, people understand the fact that if you pay your car payment or your house payment or credit card payment or any payment late, there's typically a nominal fee for processing.
All right. Okay, so you heard Jerry gave you some of his insights, what he's seen from his RCM process, obviously working with PatientBond and before PatientBond. And then we went through some of Jerry's RCM best practices, some of the great results that he's seen. Now, Jerry, I just want to open it up to you and get some of your closing thoughts here before we go into the Q&A.
Yeah, I mean, look, you're paying for this already if you're not doing it. Some of us have had discussions around that over the years, and the data just continues on the PatientBond side to prove it out. I would encourage you to look at it and think about it. Data exchange is key. So you can't do any of this without the data exchange. And you have to have the ability to actually message a patient. So if you don't have that language in your registration documents, work with your team and legal to make sure that you use the right language and you're protected on that front. But you have to have the number in the system. They have to opt in. And that's a deviation from the past, right? And it's hard to change habits. And at the front desk, we all know that they're super busy. Phones are ringing and patients checking in, and it's probably not the most fun job in the world to be the liaison between upset people who want COVID tests or their kids are sick or whatever, and the provider to render care. But embed that in the transaction and really say, hey guys, it's super important. Just ask for that number. We're not going to spam you. We just want to make it clear that we just want to send you patient responsibility messages and whatever other message you want to embed in the process.
All right, great. And just to add to the opt-in thought there, I know a lot of you on the line right now already include digital opt-in messaging on your intake forms. That may be something that you already actually have. All right. So thank you, Jerry. Appreciate your time. So I am my information's up on the screen, but I'm going to turn it over to Brent right now to see what we have in the Q&A queue.
Yeah, thanks, Mike and Jerry, for that. We have a few minutes left here, so we're going to go ahead and address the questions that have been coming in. And we've gotten quite a few, actually, so that's really good. Some good engagement here. Really quickly, can the recording be made available of this webinar? I'd like to afford it to decision makers. Yeah, absolutely. We're going to actually have this recording on the PatientBond website next week, but we will have the MP4 available so we can share it that way, also as a file. The next one, Mike, I think is directed probably to you. If I'm working with PatientBond, do I need to change my merchant services and credit card processing over to you guys?
Short answer on that is no, you do not. As you saw in some of the examples that I had shown, we just simply insert the actual link to your bill pay. We bring the patient right there. Some of the more intricate financial experience, I showed you a little bit of that start to finish. That may or may not involve a merchant service change there. It just depends on what you want to do. But for 95% of our clients, they just prefer to use their existing online bill pay portal. So no, you do not.
Okay, so kind of like a related question, I'll segue into this and might continue. What integrations required to run your RCM messaging?
We don't require any integration. I would say on the urgent care side of the house, most of our clients, and we're deployed at over 1,000 locations nationwide, most of them operate these workflows off of a simple CSV or Excel file that they send to us. And in that file, it would have things like, okay, what's the account number or PID, first name, last name, data service, what buckets are they in? Are they in a 0 to 30? Are they in a 30 to 60? And what is the dollar amount of that patient financial responsibility balance? So most of the clients that we work with, simple CSV and Excel file, and those files can be sent to us, or we can execute whatever messaging you've seen here today on the cadence that you choose. And what I mean by that is, if you want to send messaging once a week, that's fine. If you want to send it 3 times a week, that's fine. We leave that completely up to our clients on the cadence. But no, we do not require integration. And that's, really speed to market to get these going and getting that cash flow in as quickly as possible.
Okay, thank you. Jerry, I'm going to throw this one your way. After you started sending these messages out, did you see any kind of an increase in patients calling in to make a payment over the phone? Or did most of the payments come through the online bill pay link?
No, they went to the online bill pay. I mean, you'd get the occasional call saying I got some sort of text message, but no, that number's dramatically dwarfed by the number of payments that came in through the web.
Okay, great. Actually, talking, I think, Mike, you mentioned this earlier on, but in terms of average ROI, what can you expect to see from doing this kind of effort, this kind of messaging?
Well, from the urgent care clients that we service, you're looking at an average of 5x ROI. And Jerry actually touched on that too. When he was looking at, hey, how are we going to pay for the marketing work that we're currently doing on our patient acquisition and retention side? And, his answer to that was, well, just by doing the statement suppression and the digital messaging for RCM paid for all of that and then some. So, yeah, on average, about a 5x ROI.
Okay, because we have one question that came in asking about costs. What does PatientBond cost and how much it costs to do this, which is related to the ROI question?
Well, I mean, in terms of cost, how we do it and what we found over the years, and we've been in urgent care for, well over a decade. We price by location. So we price by urgent care location. It's a flat fee. We do not price per message because obviously what you saw here today, one patient can get multiple digital messages for a balance due. They may get one at day 1, day 27, day 55. So we found for our clients, the best way to do this and the way that we do it is flat fee per month per location.
Great. Okay, one came in here that actually I'll go ahead and tackle it. It has to do with the psychographics since that's my bailiwick here. But which segment typically pays their bills the fastest? What I say is self-achievers and priority jugglers are the least price sensitive. They are typically the ones that are willing to pay their bills. However, of the two, the self-achiever is most likely to stay on top of those bills and pay them quickly. I think Mike did a really good job kind of summarizing that priority juggler segment and the fact they're so busy and they're pulled in so many directions. They may not pay it as quickly without having these reminders. A priority juggler is liable to pretty much inadvertently throw a mail-delivered paper statement in the garbage along with junk mail and other things. So it's important to give them a digital option to pay by phone with text reminders since they are often using their phones quite a bit during the day. So that was an interesting question. Mike, do my patients have to be opted in to receive this type of messaging?
Yeah, I touched on that. Yes. I mean, basically, you always want them opted in. And most of our clients, they will just put that underneath the signature line or as a line item on their intake forms because they want to utilize digital channels for other types of communication. So yes, best practice. You always want to have your patients opted into to any type of digital messaging.
Great. Well, we are at the top of the hour here. I've still got a couple of these questions that are coming in here. I'm going to collect them. And what we can do is get back in touch with folks afterwards to answer their questions directly. Like I said, this recording will be on the PatientBond website early next week, and we will have the MP4 file for anybody that would like to have the direct file itself. So I appreciate everybody attending today. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Jerry, for an engaging session here. I think a lot of people got a lot out of it, and I appreciate everybody's time. Thank you.